Hello everyone, we're continuing our share in Dirshu Bahalacha. It was wonderful to see everybody live Thursday night. Now we're back to our virtual share. I'm drop under the weather. I don't know if it's allergies or just a cold, but I'm sorry if I'll be taking breaks a little bit to take a drink here and there, and I hope you can hear me well. So we're holding on Reish Mem Vav Amud Aleph. We're at the end of Siman Shin Ayin Vav in Sif Daled. So the Mechaber says, Beis hakisei shebein shnei botim. You have a bathroom that is situated between two houses. So it's connected to two houses. V'loi ervu yachad. And the owners of these two houses did not make a joint combined eruv. Rishus shneihem sheletes bai. You have a problem because you have an area here that is controlled by two different people. And we're going to get to the specifics of this case in a moment. V'asurim. And therefore, it would be usher to use this type of bathroom. V'ayel el simin shin nun hey, and we can see. 1 second, let the golf cart go by. V'ayel el simin shin nun hey. We can see further details of this halacha earlier in simin shin nun hey. So now let's take a look at what the Mishnah Berurah says here. The Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Cotton Chav Gimel. Rishus shneihem sheletes bai. What does this mean? There's an area here that is under the control of two separate rishuyos. So we have an area here that's a rishus hamashutefes. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ayin la'el simin shin nun hey. If you look earlier in simin shin nun hey, sif gimel bahagah b'Mishnah Berurah, you take a look at the words of the Ramah in shin nun hey, and you look at the Mishnah Berurah in sif katan lamed daled, the Mairi, that we're talking about a case here. Shamakim Moishav Beis Hakisei, that the area where you actually sit in the Beis Hakisei, meaning the area where, so to speak, the toilets actually are. So what we have over here is like this. We have a house, and connected to this house, I don't know if you want to call it an outhouse or you want to call it a bathroom, is connected to this house. So you open a door from the house, you go into this bathroom, and there is a Beis Moishav, there's a toilet. And adjoining it, there's another bathroom that's connected to the other house. Now, each one of these bathrooms is miyuchad, it belongs to the house that's next to it. So the actual, what we would call the bathroom, the place, the room that the cubicle that you're going into to actually go to the Beis Hakisei, that room is not a makom meshutaf. That belongs to each one of the houses independently. V'rak makom hachafira shalamata. However, the ditch that's dug out under the outhouse, shahatzaya neifeles sham, the place where the excrement actually falls into, haya shel shneihem, that area is a makom meshutaf that belongs to both houses. So, up above, you have a bathroom that's miyuchat to each house. You have a bathroom that's miyuchat to the house on the left, and you have a separate bathroom that's miyuchat to the house on the right. The problem is that underneath these bathrooms, I don't know if you want to call it the cesspool, but the area, the ditch, where the refuse, where the excrement falls from the bathrooms, that is a makom meshutaf. And that's what's creating our problem. Because now when you use one of the bathrooms, you're actually sitting in a makom miyuchad. You're sitting in a rishus that's miyuchad to you, and you're being moitzi the excrement out into a makom meshutaf. So now, like the Mishnah Berurah says over here, v'lachein aser, this is right by the ois cotton chaf hey for the Sharat Tzion. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'lachein aser, therefore it's aser to use this bathroom. The moitze me rishusai l'rishus hashutvin, because by using the bathroom, you're being moitzi the excrement from your own rishus, from the bathroom which is your rishus, l'rishus hashutvin, to a makom hameshutif, to the ditch below, shaloi erev imoi, that you didn't make an erev. That makom meshutif you don't have an erev with, because you didn't make a joint combined eruv chatzeros. You didn't make an eruv chatzeros with your neighbor. So to go into the bathroom is not a problem. To carry something from your house into the bathroom is also not a problem. It's all part of your house. But when you use the bathroom, you're actually being moitzi the excrement to a makom meshutav she'ena me'urev. Aval, however, says the Chavetz Chaim, Im gam mokem amoishav hayashayich lishneim, if the outhouse would belong to both, mutter, then it would be mutter to use the outhouse. Because what problem is there? You're in your house. Your house is your own rishus. You're allowed to walk from your house and go into the outhouse. There's no problem with going into a rishus that's meshutif. So you go into this bathroom that's a shared rishus between you and your neighbor. Now you use the bathroom and you're moitzi excrement from the bathroom, which is a makom meshutif, to the ditch, which is a makom meshutif. There's no problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chav Daled, the Ramah mentioned over here, V'ayin le'el Siman Shin Nun Hey, that you should look at what we saw previously in Siman Shin Nun Hey. Says the Chavetz Chaim, what is the Ramah sending you to? Tesham Mavur B'Hagah B'Sif Gimel. Over there in Sif Gimel, you have a Ramah, Prate Adinim, that gives you a lot of details of the dinim of using an outhouse or a bathroom on Shabbos, where there are questions of being mitzi from a Rishos HaYachid to a Rishos HaRabim. V'gam, and also you have over there, the halacha de imshachach v'lo yerav, in a situation like ours, where there's no question of being mitzi from Rishos HaYachid to Rishos HaRabim. The only question is you're being mitzi from a Rishus that belongs to one person to a Rishus HaMeshutif, to a combined Rishus, without an Eruv Chatzerei, so that's only an Issa D'Rabbanan. V'gam de imshachach v'lo yerav, in a case like ours, if somebody forgot and did not make a combined Erev with his neighbor, b'diavad mutter lipanos, b'diavad he would be allowed to use the outhouse. Anyway, the gadol k'vayd habriyos, because kavod habriyos, the dignity of an individual, is something which is very, very important to the Torah HaKadoshah, and therefore we're not going to say that somebody cannot use his outhouse because of this Issa D'Rabbanan. So if you forgot to make that Eruv Chatzeros, you would be allowed to use this outhouse anyway. Now let's turn to Siman Shin Ayin Zayin. Din shtei aliyos zu keneged zu, the halacha of two raised porches, one opposite the other, hapesukais lachatzer, that both open on to a combined chatzer down below, ubai sif echad, and we have one sif. What is this talking about? Says the Machaber. Shtei aliyos hapesukais lachatzer zu keneged zu. You have two buildings that overlook a courtyard. One is opposite the other. Each building has a raised porch on it of the type that we've discussed previously. You have that raised porch on the building where you have a lot of individual apartments open up onto this raised porch. So it's like we've said, it's like these motels. I think it was Moshe Zweig sent to me that there are a lot of motels like this in Florida. You have that raised second-story porch, where you have a lot of individual apartments or units open up onto the raised porch. And the truth is that you can see a beautiful picture of this in Dirshu footnote number 1. It's a footnote that starts, it's a long footnote. It starts on the right-hand column, and on the top of the left-hand column you have a beautiful picture. So you have those two raised porches, one on the left side of the chutzner, one on the right side of the chutzner. Each porch in this picture has two units opening onto it. So you have shtei aliyos, two raised porches, hapsuchos lechutzner zu keneged zu, that open up onto a combined chutzner. One is opposite the other. V'achas asasa guma b'chutzner. One of these raised porches. What does that mean? One of the raised porches. One. The units that open up onto one of the raised porches, they went down to the chutzner and they made a ditch, and we're going to see in a moment the purpose of this ditch. Kedei lishpaich b'chutzner, so that they should be allowed to spill out their wastewater b'chutzner into a chutzner she'ein ba arba amos meimeha. Kedei lishpaich b'chutzner she'ein ba arba amos meimeha, so that they should be permitted to pour out their wastewater into a chutzner below, even though that chutzner is smaller than 4 amos by 4 amos. Now, what's at work here? What are we discussing over here? So, if you remember, back in Siman Shin Nun Zayin, we had an interesting halacha. What is the halacha if somebody lives in a chutzner, and that chutzner is smaller than dalet amos by dalet amos? Now let's remember that they didn't have running water, and they didn't have sewers. And yet everybody needed water. They needed water to wash. They needed water for their food preparation. So everybody was using water. So they collected their wastewater and they would pour out their wastewater. Now the Chazal were worried about the following problem. If somebody lives in a very small chutzner, what might happen is he doesn't want his chutzner to turn into a mud pie. So he has wastewater. He takes it from his house to the chutzner, but he doesn't want to pour his wastewater out into the chutzner because he's going to make his chutzner all muddy. So we're afraid that he might come to take his wastewater, remove it to Rishus Harabim, and pour it out in Rishus Harabim. If he did that, he would be over on Hoitzah. He's taking his bucket of water, he's taking it from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus Harabim. That would be an Issa Daraisa. So the Chazal said as follows. If you have a big chutzner, if your chutzner is larger than 4 amos by 4 amos, then we're not afraid of this problem. Why? Because the Chazal said the average person uses a sasayim of water over a day. And the Chazal said, as long as your chutzner is larger than 4 amos by 4 amos, your sasayim of wastewater is not going to turn your chutzner into a muddy mess. And therefore, if you live in a large chutzner, we're not worried that you're going to take your wastewater and bring it out to Rishus Harabim. You'll just spill it out into the chutzner without a problem. And it doesn't matter how many people live over there. That's what we said in Shin Nun Zayin. As long as your chutzner is daled al daled, we don't care how much water you're using. We're not afraid that you're going to be tempted to pour your water out into Rishus HaYachid. However, if you live in a small chutzner, if your chutzner is less than daled al daled, and therefore your chutzner is not large enough to absorb the wastewater of even one person, then we have to worry that you're going to pour your wastewater out into the Rishus Harabim. So therefore the Chazal said, if you live in such a small chutzner, as the golf cart break again, I'm sorry about that. So the Chazal said, if you live in such a small chutzner, if you live in a chutzner that's less than daled al daled, you're not allowed to pour your wastewater out into the chutzner unless you dig a guma. You have to dig a ditch in your chutzner that's large enough to be able to take and to absorb a sasayim of water. Once you have such a ditch in your chutzner, now we're no longer worried that you might come to take your water out to Rishus Harabim, because we know that you have a ditch that's capable of holding the water that you need. I don't know if you remember, but back in Siman Shun Nun Zayin, when we were discussing this, I said that in New Jersey they were mechaven to this halacha. In New Jersey, they make you, when you make a construction project, you have to create what's called a retention pond. You have to make a pond, a man-made pond, that's big enough to hold the runoff of your construction project until the sewers can take the water. So lahavdil, what Chazal said over here is, you have to dig a guma that's big enough to hold your wastewater. Therefore, your chutzner will not become a muddy mess. Therefore, you're not worried about the cleanliness of your chutzner, and you won't be tempted to take your wastewater from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus Harabim. Now, over here, we're dealing with the following case. We have these two buildings with the raised porches. So you have a raised porch on the left, a raised porch on the right. But each one of them has multiple units opening up onto the porch. They each have a staircase or a ladder that goes down to the chutzner. What's the halacha as far as Eruv Chatzeros in this situation? Each one of these raised porches is its own chutzner. The porch is a chutzner that serves the units that open up onto the porch. So on the left, we have one porch that's a chutzner. On the right, we have another porch that's a chutzner. They each have a staircase going down into the middle area, into this combined chutzner. The area in the middle is a chutzner ha'meshutefes. It belongs to each one of these two chatzerim. Each aliyah, each porch, has a staircase which serves as a pesach, as a doorway that goes down to that joint chutzner. In such a case, there are options over here. Each one of these porches can make their own eruv. Each one can make their own eruv, and now the residents of the porches will be allowed to take kelim sheshavsu babayis. They could take a bucket that started off Shabbos in their house, and they could bring it out onto their mirpeset. They could bring it out onto their porch. However, if they did not make a joint combined Eruv over the downstairs chutzner, they cannot transfer anything from their houses down to the joint chutzner in the bottom, because they didn't join in a combined Eruv. If they want to, they could join in a combined Eruv. Should they join in a combined Eruv, then each one would be permitted to take even Kalim Sheshavsu B'Bateyim. They could each take buckets from their houses on either side, and they could bring them down to the porch because they combined in a joint joint Eruv. Now, that's the halacha of this situation as far as Eruvei Chatzeres are concerned. Now we're throwing another loop into the equation over here, and that is the halacha of Siman Shin Nun Zayin of the small chutzner and the wastewater. Now we have a new problem. The problem is that this joint chutzner that's downstairs below is a very small chutzner. It's less than Dalet al Dalet. Since the chutzner down below is less than Dalet al Dalet, nobody is allowed to pour wastewater into this chutzner unless they dig a guma, unless somebody digs a ditch in the chutzner that's capable of holding a sasayim of water. Now, in the case that the Mechaber gives me over here, the Mechaber says, we have this situation of the two mirpesets, and if you look at the top line, Va'achas asasa guma b'chutzner kedei lishpach b'chutzner she'ein ba'arba amis meimeha. One side of the chutzner, one of the mirpesets, one of the raised porches, those residents got together and they dug a ditch on their side of the chutzner. So they dug a ditch down in the chutzner, but close to their porch. They dug a ditch that could hold a sasayim of water to allow them to pour their wastewater down into the chutzner. V'hashniya loy asasa. But on the other side of the chutzner, the people who live in the mirpesat on the other side of the chutzner, they did not dig such a guma. They did not dig such a ditch. Now, really, we don't need two ditches. We only need one ditch. But in the case that the Mechaber is giving me, and it's critical to realize this because it's going to come into play as far as the final halacha, what happened over here is one side, one mirpeset, they dug a ditch, and they dug it on their side of the chutzner, close to their porch. Now we want to know, what's the halacha? Are you allowed to pour water out into this chutzner or not? So the Mechaber says it depends. Im ervu yachad, if the residents of both aliyos, if the residents of both porches got together, im ervu yachad, if they joined in one combined eruv, mutaros lishpach memehen. Now everybody is allowed to pour their wastewater out into the chutzner. Why not? We have a very simple situation over here. Everybody is one big happy family. They made one big Eruvei Chatzeres on everything. So what's the problem? You're allowed to pour wastewater into the chutzner because even though it's a small chutzner, it has a guma that could hold a sasayim of water. And the halacha is, in a small chutzner, once you have a guma that could hold a sasayim, you're allowed to pour out as much wastewater as you want. So everybody could pour water down into the chutzner. And not only that, everybody could even take a bucket of wastewater from their house on either side and bring it down to the chutzner and pour the water wherever they want. They could pour it straight into the guma, they could pour it out to the chutzner, because they made a joint combined eruv. So you're allowed to take a keli sheshavas babayis on either one of the aliyas and bring it down to the joint chutzner. So there's no problems. If everybody joined in a combined eruv, there are no problems here at all. Now we're going to break here for a second and let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is cut in aleph. Va'achas asasa guma. The residents of one side of the chutzner made a ditch. Samuch la neged aliyasa. Like I told you, they made a ditch on their side of the chutzner. That's going to be important very soon. They made a ditch on their side near their chutzner, ice cotton base, kedei lishpaich b'chutzner she'ein ba, to permit them to pour out wastewater into their chutzner, even though the chutzner is less than dalet al dalet. This is the downstairs chutzner, the joint chutzner. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, because maybe we forgot, the b'chutzner kazeh, because when you have a small chutzner that's less than dalet al dalet, also lishpach mayim, you're not allowed to pour out wastewater, kishe'ein baguma lazeh, unless you dug a ditch that could hold a sasayim of water. The chanal b'simin shin nun zayin sif aleph ayin sham, like we saw the halacha previously in simin shin nun zayin sif aleph. Ubiyesh bar chatzar arba amos. If the chatzar would be 4 by 4, ayin b'Seif hasif b'Hagah. You'll see that halacha at the end of the Seif and in the Ramah. U'b'masha kasavnu sham. Excuse me. Ice cotton gimel. Lish paich mehen. They want to be able to pour their water. Afilu taich haguma lahedya. The Mechaber said, if they joined in one combined Erev, if the residents of each porch, if they joined in one combined Erev, so they were Ma'ariv even on the Chatzar below, then everybody is allowed to pour their water out. They can even take their water and pour it straight into the Guma. They could even do this straight from their houses. They could even take a bucket that started off Shabbos in one of the houses and bring it straight down to the Chatzar. Because, why not? There's an Eruv Chatzeres and everything. So that was the simple case. Now let's go back into the Mechaber and let's see the more complicated case. In my Mishnah Berurah, it's near the end of the second line of the Mechaber. However, ve'im lo ye'ervu yachad. Let's say they did not make a joint combined Erev. V'ha'achas erev ala atzma. So the residences of one porch, they made one Erev for themselves. V'hashniya lo erev klal. And the second Erev, the second side, the second porch, they didn't make it Erev Chatzeres at all. Okay, so now, let's stop here for a second. So now what's the situation? The porch on the right side, all of the apartments that open up onto the right side porch, they made their own Erev. So they're allowed to take stuff from their houses onto their mirpeset. Because their mirpeset, their porch, is their chutzner, and they all made it a Eruv Chatzeres. To take something down to the chutzner below from one of their houses, that they can't do. Because they didn't join in an Eruv with the other porch. So they can't take anything downstairs to the chutzner. The chutzner on the left side, they didn't make it a Eruv Chatzeres at all. So they're not even allowed to take anything from their houses onto their mirpeset. Because their houses, each house is an individual rishus, and their mirpeset is a joint rishus for all of the units that open up onto the mirpeset. So the one on the other side, they can't even take anything from their houses onto their mirpeset. Certainly they can't take anything down to the chutzner. Now, let's say the chutzner on the right was the chutzner that made the guma. So now downstairs in the chutzner, there is a guma near the right side chutzner. And the right side chutzner is the one that made an Erev on their mirpeset. So now, says the Mechaber, Zu shaloi erva, the chutzner on the left that didn't make, the aliyah on the left that didn't make it a Eruv Chatzeres at all, asura. They're not allowed to pour out water anywhere. That's why the Mechaber says a flat asura. They're not allowed to pour out wastewater even inside their own houses. Why not? The explanation is, I'm going to speak it out even though the Mishnah Berurah is going to go through it. The side that didn't make an Erev at all, they are totally messed up. Let's see, what could they do with their wastewater? They certainly can't take a bucket of wastewater from their house and take it down to the chutzner. How could they do that? It's a keli sheshavas babayis, and they want to go down to the chutzner. The chutzner is a chutzner amushutefes with the other side, and they didn't make a joint erev. Not only that, they can't even take a bucket out of their house and bring it onto the mirpeset, because they didn't make an erev with the other units of their mirpeset, of their porch. So they can't take the bucket that was shavas babayis and bring it out onto the mirpeset. Not only that, they can't even take the bucket and pour out the water inside their house so that the water should flow from the house to the mirpeset to the chutzner. They can't do that either. Why can't they do that? The Mishnah Berurah is going to explain that they can't do that because we are afraid. The Chazal were afraid. If we're going to let them pour their wastewater out into their house, they're going to pick up the bucket of wastewater, they're going to be about to pour it out in the house, and they're going to say, what am I, nuts? I'm going to get my whole floor muddy. I'm not pouring it out in the house. Let me take it out to the mirpeset. Take it out to the mirpeset, they're not allowed to do that. They're taking a keli sheshavas babayis, and they're bringing it out onto a mirpeset that they don't have an erev with. So they can't do that either. So in this case, where one side made an erev, and the other side did not make an erev, the side that made the erev has no problem. They can do whatever they want. But the side that did not make an erev, they have no way to get rid of their wastewater at all. there's nothing that they can do. So zu shaloi erva asura. The side that didn't make an erev cannot do anything with their wastewater. V'she erva muteris. The side that made an erev, they have no problem doing whatever they want with their erev, with their wastewater. Ubelvad, there's one thing that they cannot do. Ubelvad, what they cannot do is shaloi tishpaich lehedya baguma. They cannot pour their wastewater directly out off their mirpeset directly into the guma in the chutzner. That they can't do. They can't pour their water directly into the chutzner because the chutzner is still a chutzner she'eina mu'ureves. The chutzner below, even the side that made an erev, they made an erev on their porch, but they didn't make a combined erev with the other side with the chutzner, so they can't take the water and pour it down into the chutzner, into the guma. Ela tishpaich ba'aliyah, but they could pour it onto their mirpeset, they could pour it onto their porch because they made an erev, vehem yardin laguma, and the water will flow down to the porch. That they can do. They're spilling out the water on the mirpeset in such a way that we know the water is going to flow down into the erev, into the chutzner below, and the chutzner below they didn't make an erev with. How are they allowed to do that? So the Ramah says right away, the koichai b'chutzner she'eina mu'ureves shari. Because when we're talking about koichai, when we're talking about force, when we're talking about that you're not transferring the water directly into a chutzner she'eina mu'ureves, instead you're pouring it onto the mirpeset, and it's going to flow from the mirpeset to the chutzner she'eina mu'ureves. That's mutter by a derabanan, by a chutzner she'eina mu'ureves. Now let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and daled. The ha'achas erva. So the case that the Mechaber gave me was, one side made an erev, and they made a guma, they made a ditch on their side of the chutzner. We still haven't seen why that's important. The other side did not make an erev at all. The ha'achas erva, says the Mishnah Berurah, oisa she'asa sahaguma. The chutzner that made the ditch on their side of the chutzner, they were the chutzner that made an erev on their porch. So the way I gave it to you, the chutzner on the right side, they made an erev on their porch, and they made a ditch on their side of the chutzner. Im kol shcheineha hadarim etzla b'aliyasa. They made an erev together with the other residents of the porch. Umayri b'sheyesh mirpeset lifnei kol aliyah v'aliyah. This is the case where all the units open up onto a combined porch. V'nechdasan hakoil lahamirpeset. Everybody goes out onto the porch. Derech pesach aliyah umimeni yardin l'chutzner, and from the porch they go down to the chutzner. So in this case, what did the Mechaber say? The Mechaber said in Asura that the side that did not make an erev, they're not going to be allowed to do anything with their water. Says the Mishnah Berurah Asura, afilu imasa gam kein guma. Even if the chutzner on the left, that's the chutzner that did not make an erev on their porch, even if they made a ditch down in the chutzner, they still have nothing to do with their water. Certainly if they didn't make a ditch. Not only are they not allowed to take their bucket from their house down into the chutzner and pour it into the ditch, or to take a bucket out of their house and bring it onto their porch, to halay erva, they're not allowed to do that because they didn't make an erev upstairs on their porch. So they can't take a bucket from their house onto their porch. But not only are they not allowed to do that, but even to pour out the water in their house, so that the water should flow from the house to the mirpeset, and from there downstairs to the chutzner, gam kein aser. That's also aser. Why? Like I told you, the chayshinan, because we're worried, shema yachas al kilkal beisai shalai yitanef mipnei hashayvchin, because Chazal were afraid that these people would be worried that they're going to mess up the floor of their house. V'yataltal akliyam hashayvchin lahamirpeset lehedya, so they're going to end up taking the bucket out to the mirpeset, and they're not allowed to. The mirpeset is a joint rishus for all of the units that open up onto the mirpeset, and they did not make an erev, so this would be aser. So again, the side that did not make an erev, there's nothing that they could do with their wastewater. They can't bring it down to the chutzner. They have no eruv with the other side. They can't bring it out to the mirpeset. They didn't make an eruv on the mirpeset. They can't pour it out in the house because we're chayshish if we let them do that. They're going to be afraid to make their floor dirty, and they're going to come to bring it out to the mirpeset. So they can't do anything. Ice cotton vav v'she erva muteris. But the side that made an eruv, the other chutzner, the chutzner on the right, they made an eruv. And they made a guma on their side of the chutzner. They made a ditch on their side of the chutzner. They're allowed to pour out their wastewater. But we're going to see that there's something that even they're not allowed to do. Golf cart break. There's something that even they're not allowed to do, and we're going to say we're going to see momentarily what they're not allowed to do and why it's an important point that they made the guma on their side of the chutzner. V'she'erva muteres, says the Chavetz Chaim, u'belvad she'asa saguma, the chanal. It's only mutter for them to pour out their wastewater because they made a guma. And you need a guma because the chutzner is less than dalet al dalet. Now, here's the point. Va'afilu im chaverta asa saguma. Let's say the aliyah on the right side made an eruv, but they didn't make a guma. The chutzner on the left side made a guma. So, the chutzner on the right side has an eruv with their porch. But they didn't make a guma. But the chutzner on the left side, the chutzner that did not make an eruv, they made a guma on their side of the chutzner. Now, they still can't do anything. The guys on the left still can't do anything because they don't have an eruv. But you might say, the guys on the right, what's the problem? They have an eruv. And there is a guma in the chutzner. What do I care if the guma is here or the guma is there? There's a guma. Once there's a guma, you're allowed to pour water in the chutzner. So if there's an eruv on the right side porch and there's a guma, even if the guma is on the left, why shouldn't the people on the right side be allowed to pour out the water? They're not allowed to. And we're going to see now why. Avo b'loi guma asur lishpach bebeisa olam merpeset sheyerdu hamayim lechutzner. If there's no guma at all in the chutzner, then you're not allowed to pour wastewater in the chutzner, even if you have an eruv. Because then we have the problem of shin nun zayin. You have a small chutzner, you're pouring wastewater into the chutzner, you're not going to want to turn the chutzner into a mud pie, so we're afraid that you're going to take your water out to Rosh Hashanah. So if you have no guma, I don't care if you have an eruv. If you have no guma, you're not allowed to pour out water into the chutzner. But even if the guys on the left made a guma, and if you pour water into the chutzner, the water is going to go into the guma, so we're not worried about Rosh Hashanah. Gam kain aser. It's still aser for the people on the right to pour out their water. Why? The chayshinan sheyachosh lekilkal achotzer shelo yitanef be'ashayvchim derech achilasan leguma. Now what we're afraid of is like this. The people on the right made a chotzer on their porch. If they would have a guma right under their porch because they made a guma on their side, we would let them pour out their water. Because why not? They're allowed to take their bucket from their house to the mirpeset. They're going to pour out their water on the mirpeset. The water's going to go from the mirpeset to the ditch. No problem. But they didn't make a guma on their side. The people on the left made a guma on their side. So now what's going to happen? They're going to take their bucket out of their house onto the mirpeset. They're going to pour out the water. The water is going to go down to the chutzner. It's going to have to run across the chutzner until it gets to the guma on the other side. And it's going to make a mud pie downstairs in the chutzner while it runs to the other side of the chutzner. So now what are we afraid of? Now we're afraid that the people on the right, if we let them pour their water onto the mirpeset, they're going to come to take their bucket from the mirpeset, take it down to the chutzner, walk to the other side of the chutzner, and pour it directly into the guma that's on the left. And that they're not allowed to do because they can't take their bucket from their house down to the chutzner. Because the chutzner is a chutzner hamashutef with the people on the left, and they did not make a joint combined eruv. So that's why the Mechaber gave me this case where one side made a ditch on their side. If they made a ditch on their side, they're going to be allowed to pour out their water. But if the ditch was on the other side, then even they're not going to be allowed to pour out their water, even though they made an Erev. The Chayshinan Shiyacha Shekilkal HaChatzer Shlo Yitanif Me'ashoifchim Derech HaLechasa Leguma Kevin Sha'aguma Rechaika Mimena, since the ditch is all the way on the other side of the Chatzer. V'yoytzi Klei Abayis Ma'ashoifchim LeChatzer K'dei Lishpaich Lehedya Leguma. So we're afraid that they're going to come to take their bucket from their house. The bucket was a Keli Sheshavas Babayis. They're going to take it with their wastewater. They're going to bring it down to the Chatzer so that they could pour it directly into the Guma. V'heim haloi lo ervu yachad. And that would be usher because they didn't make a joint combined Erev. Ois Katan Zayin, the Mechaber said that also what the people on the right are not allowed to do, even though they have an Erev, is that they're not allowed to pour their water directly from the Mirpeset down into the Chatzer, into the Guma. Shalai tishbak lahedya baguma. Why? The ha'chatzer meshutaf l'shneim. Because the downstairs chatzer is a chatzer meshutefes between the two chatzeros. V'hem le'ervu yachad, and they didn't make a joint combined erev. So you can't take the water and pour it directly from the upstairs down into the chatzer. You're going from your chatzer out into a chatzer she'enim ureves. You're not allowed to do that. What you could do is, you pour the water onto your mirpeset, you have an erev on your mirpeset, and let it flow down to the chatzer. That's mutter. Why? The koichai b'chatzer is katan ches v'tzayda loymar. Avagav da chatzer she'aguma ba'shayich l'shneim. Even though the downstairs chatzer is a chatzer ha'meshutif, v'hamayim yordin sham baguma mikoichai, and the water is definitely going to flow from the mirpeset down to the chatzer by your force, by the force that you're created. That's okay, because koichai is mutter in a chatzer she'enam urevis. We'll just finish this off. Says the Ramah, last line in the Mechaber, if the Chatzer would be bigger than 4 Amos, then we wouldn't have this problem at all, because then we don't have the issue of Shin Nun Zayin. We don't have the issue that we're afraid you're going to pour water into the Rishus Harabim, because the Chatzer is big enough. Then you wouldn't need a Guma at all. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and test, if the Chatzer is bigger than Dalet Amos and Dalet Amos, then if both aliyos, if both porches made their own individual Erev, so then the residents of the units on each side could take their wastewater onto their mirpeset, pour it out on the mirpeset, and let it go to the Chatzer. They're not allowed to pour it directly into the Chatzer because they still didn't make a combined Erev over the downstairs Chatzer, which is a Chatzer HaMeshutefes. So that they still can't do. But they could each pour it onto their mirpeset. The Kevin Sheyesh B'Chatzer Shir Arba Amos. I skipped. Hainu lishbaich gamal merpeset v'shered l'chatzer. We were talking about a case b'she'er v'kolechad la'atzmai, where each side made their own individual erev. Now, it doesn't even matter where the guma is, on the right side or the left side. Now we're not afraid that somebody's going to take the bucket out of his house and bring it downstairs to the chatzar to pour it in the chatzar. The kevin sheyesh bar chatzar shir arba amos, because now, since the chatzar is bigger than 4x4, b'shir shehu rachav kazeh, when you have such a big chatzar, roi sheyibar hamayim b'mekaymai, now we're not worried about the chatzar becoming muddy, because it's bigger than 4x4, and Chazal said once you're bigger than 4x4, it's going to absorb the water, and we're not worried about mud. The chatzar is not going to become ruined. Ice cotton yud. Ve'ein tzrichin leguma. Now you don't even have to make a guma at all. Ritzayda loymar. V'alkein afilu emechad asa guma l'tzad aliyasai. Even if one side made a guma, l'chashinon sha'asheni yolech hakliyam ha'sheifchin l'sham. Now we're not afraid that the people on the right are going to carry their bucket over to the guma on the left. You don't need a guma at all. So why would he take it to the guma to pour it in the guma? He'll just pour it in the chatzar, he'll pour it on the mirpeset, and let it flow down to the chatzar wherever it lands, because we're not worried about mud. That concludes Siman Shenayin Zayin, and that concludes today's shir. Be well. Thank you.